Okay, getting ready here. Is everybody ready to do some drawing today? Okay. And let's do this. Boom! Okay, welcome everybody to my studio here in Vancouver, British Columbia. My name's Michael Markowsky, and I'm going to be a little bit about how to draw. And this is episode number 9 of 10. So we're getting kind of close towards the end of this first session. But I think next week, at the same time and same place, I'm going to start the kind of part 2 to this, and we'll just kind of keep on going. Because I've got a good momentum anyway. I'm starting to kind of get the hang of whole crazy live streaming. Yikes, sorry, that's probably really, really loud. I guess is the is the lesson there is just when you think things are going really, really well, you just kind of smile and nod. Okay, so what I want to do today is I want to show you one of my favorite art techniques, and it's one of the techniques that has been around for a long time, and most artists, well, not most art, well, actually, I would say actually probably a lot of artworks, up until very recently, and we're talking about like art history very recently, is about the last 100 years. So previous to that, in the Western tradition anyway, artists used grids in order to help compose an image. And going back to some of the, I don't know if we talked about the golden ratio or the rule of thirds. Certainly talked about that in my photography class, but it's a compositional device in order to how to organize your picture. And kind of underlying that structure would be a grid, and so you'd use a grid to help organize the composition. And beyond that, artists used grids to enlarge and to shrink images down, or just to do a straight-on copy of them, because long before photography and long before even the printing press, how did somebody living in Italy know about what was going on in Spain or England, France, Russia, and so on and so forth, right? So artists would copy, sometimes they would copy their own image and then as prints and then distribute those, or they would copy them as and distribute those, or actually make replicas of their own paintings and then sell those. And so that's why sometimes if you've gone to a museum, you're like, this painting looks really familiar. Well, there's that whole art of artists copying the so-called master's artwork. And so if you look on a little description in a museum, and it might say something like, I'm trying to think of an artist's name, like Cézanne after Delacroix or something, and that would mean Cézanne, an image after or based upon, inspired by Delacroix. And so I think that's a really interesting and important tradition to keep in mind, because I think today we have this idea that copying, reproducing anything when it comes to drawing is cheating, or it's wrong, or it's bad, and people have all these weird moral hang-ups about this thing that is really a fundamental, like I cannot stress, fundamental part of the art making process, and certainly the art education, the art learning process. That's just basically how artists learned for so long, is going to a museum and copying the art that they saw on the walls. And if you go to some museums in Europe, you still see this a lot. Not as much here in Canada or the United States, but in France, if you go on any day, I guarantee you, to the Louvre, you will see somebody sitting with a small easel making a reproduction of a painting on display, because that's still very fundamental to the way art is taught out there. Okay, so I'm going to blabbing on as we while we get started here, and I think what I want to do is I want to do a drawing based on another artwork. Let's bring, how am I going to do that? So maybe I'm just going to show, maybe that'll be too big if I try to show this all at once. So let's, okay. So the image that might be a little too big. Oh, that's, I gotta move this over big time, don't I? Okay. So the image that I've got on the screen right now is some flowers by the American artist Alex K-A-T-Z, Alex Katz, and he, I feel really bad saying this. I'm quite certain he's still alive. He's definitely one of the kind of elder statesmen of art, and the reason why we're going to do a little warm-up drawing based on his artwork is he's one of the artists who certainly embraced the idea of the grid and of using these very traditional art techniques. So he would be, I think he was born in the late 1920s, so you know he's getting up there for sure. So you know he's almost 100, if not already there, and so he would have learned a very traditional way of making art. And if you look up his artwork, maybe why don't I think I've got some of his. It's just so images of flowers of his that I found, and I thought maybe that would be kind of just something springtimey for us to focus on. But most of his art is more figurative and a little bit of landscape, and they're also really large paintings. So you, let's say this is him right here. I wonder how old this article is. But most of his paintings are quite large. Again, here's another one of, oops, I can't quite see that here. So they're big paintings, and so he uses the grid to enlarge artworks. And we're going to talk about how to do that in today's session, and because I just think this is a really, really important. And of course, there are technologies that exist that you enlarge an artwork on your own with like a video projector or an overhead projector. There's ways to do it with computers, cameras, and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't have one of those things, and you don't even have access to a photographer, how would you enlarge or even just transfer a photograph onto a piece of paper or canvas? So that's what we're going to focus on today. So you've got your sketchbook, right? Let's open up to a nice blank page here. I think I'm going to go to a different view, and let's bring this down here. Okay. So I think I may even rotate the sketchbook out. Let's zoom out a bit here. Is that going to fit all in? I got to zoom out a little more. Okay. So this lag here about 3 seconds before I move things, before I see it happening on the screen. So it's always a bit of a there. Okay. So to begin with, I'm just making sure this is nice and focused. Okay. Let's I haven't seen this image before, so this is great. This is a nice little warm-up. So I'm going to start kind of making these kind of nice big arcs for this flower that's kind of on the the left there. And it's not about getting it all perfect. And, you know, I might even though this runs off the page, I think I'm going to try to illustrate that as well anyway. And we can kind of invent things as we go. So, you know, one of the things that's going to be interesting about today is kind of all about, you know, personal expression versus using other images as the source of your own of an artwork, and how important or not important for you to capture something faithfully, to reproduce it exactly, because personally I've never been too, you know, bothered whether or not what I'm drawing actually looks exactly like what I'm drawing. I'm more interested in kind of capturing a feeling or a look of something, but less, and maybe a likeness, as you might call it. Some of these details are hard to see here. So this is, again, a nice warm-up drawing, so we don't got to get it perfect. And a likeness means to kind of capture, not necessarily it looks exactly like something, but that it has like a spirit or a feeling of the original. So you can see here, this is good because this is my warm-up. I'm kind of, well, I might be able to make all this fit and make it look like I knew what I was doing from the beginning. That's not always the case, but okay, let's see. You can see I'm just sort of doing these. Another reason also why I really like drawing flowers or organic things as a warm-up in particular is that they can be a lot more forgiving than trying to draw a person's face or some kind of sign or architecture, which, you know, often require, you know, very straight lines and things to be kind of correctly measured out and proper proportions. So, you know, flowers are great because, you know, if it doesn't quite look exactly like the original, it's like, well, that's, you can just say, well, you know, that's the way this plant looked at the time I was drawing it. Yeah, maybe it changed a bit, but or maybe it's a very unique species. Okay. So I have to make a few little adjustments here and there to make all of this kind of work. And God, I don't know how long we've been drawing on this, probably about 5 minutes or less. If I wanted, I could also start coloring on here. I think just as a warm-up, I'm going to avoid the color. If I, you know, I'm going to put a little bit of, as if this would be the white outline on here. And so another thing that is going to be kind of something I want to talk about is kind of the origin of the word cartoon. You've probably watched Saturday morning cartoons, either as a little kid or maybe you have kids of your own that watch cartoons. I know our daughter loves to watch Peppa Pig. And interestingly enough, the origin of that word, cartoon, comes from this process that we're going to do shortly here, which is using a grid. So artists would use, they would sketch something out in a sketchbook or, a piece of paper or a piece of wood, or because a lot of art was actually made on panels, or like a rabbit skin or some kind of like leather kind of like surface. And so artists would draw on those kinds of materials and make a little sketch. And then when they were happy with that drawing, they would enlarge it onto a larger piece of paper, and that piece of paper would be called a cartoon. And my head is in the picture sorry if you're having to get out of the way. So artists would draw using a grid the same picture on a much larger piece of paper called a cartoon, and then that would be used to help transfer an image onto for a mural, onto, like Michelangelo when he was doing the Sistine Chapel, he would have used cartoons in order to get those images up onto the ceiling, which, if you've ever been to the Vatican and seen that, unquestionably a masterpiece, and you see how high up those ceilings are, it would have been impossible for somebody to, he's laying on his back, to draw a little bit and then climb all the way down this giant scaffold all the way back down to the ground, and then look up at the ceiling and go, oh no, that guy's ear is too big and I gotta move that hand. So he would draw on these big cartoons and then carry them up onto the scaffold, and then another step that I'll kind of talk about is that they would take the cartoon. Well, maybe I'll demonstrate that. Yeah, I've never been. This is an opportunity for me to do a little demonstration, actually. So maybe while you're finishing that picture, I'm just gonna get a little material here. Okay, so if you're, maybe I'll keep, oops, how come that one's still up there? Let's bring this up here. Got a weird little glitch going on here. Oh, that's a bummer. I can't get. Well, I hope everything's going okay. A little bit of a tech thing going on. Okay. Well, uh-oh, that's frozen. I wonder if people could still hear me out there. I'm just gonna close this app and we'll see if I can get it going again. Okay, that's weird. I wonder what the actual output was there, because my switcher here froze. So anyway, I'm going to, let me see. Okay, so what they would do, if you imagine that the drawing I just made was a cartoon, what they would do is they would, is they would take a a small, like a pin, and let me bring this other image back up here. And so what they would do is poke holes in the image along the, the outline, so that on this side you would see, I don't know if it shows up very well, but you'd see kind of, and you do the whole thing, and of course, again, this would be it'd be a huge image. And then I think I got some. Ideally, what you would have is a bag full of, like a sock full of charcoal. And so I don't know if this is going to work very well, but let's just see. And then, well, it's not working. This is why I'm not a Renaissance painter. But if I had like a bag of charcoal, and we would pound down on the surface where the little dots are, you would see all these little dots appear on this other surface or the wall, and then you could just kind of connect all the lines and then keep on drawing. So this was kind of a very important technique that allowed artists to transfer images onto large surfaces, and so that's a little bit of a art history lesson there while we're doing this. And my fingers are a little bit dirty, but that's why I mix soap and water, so later on I will clean myself up. Okay, so I think we're all primed and ready to go. So let's I'm gonna even tear this page out of my sketchbook. I know I've said many times not to do that, but we're gonna do another activity here. And let me see, just to see how big. So the paper in my sketchbook is roughly, I guess this is 8.5 by 11. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to learn how to use a grid to make our next series of artworks. So, do I have one that has... Okay, so to make a grid, you could use a ruler if you wanted, but I'm going to just use a piece of paper, an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And I'm going to fold it in half. And so we would call this hot dog style, if you've spent any time in an elementary school. Got a hot dog style. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to fold it in again. And I'm going to fold this one in. Right, so I've got 4 even folds, and I'm also going to take it and then fold this over top, and your folds don't have to be perfect. For what we're gonna do today, I wouldn't sweat it. It's just about kind of understanding some basic concepts. Okay, so you see this on this side, and actually the good thing with my dirty fingers is they're going to help highlight these folds. In fact, well, rather than, since probably very few of you have charcoal, what I can do is just kind of go over top of these lines. So part of this process it can be a time-consuming way of working, but it produces, if you're patient, it'll produce very good results. Okay, so once we've done that, let's then fold the paper the other way into hamburger or taco style. If you, again, I've taught many times in elementary schools across Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, as well as Los Angeles, where I went for graduate school. And afterwards I stayed down there for another 10 years. And I was teaching in various different places in the public and private schools all over the place. And okay, so if I've got that, and then you know what, I'm just gonna use maybe a different color here. Okay, so now we've got a grid, and you know, I'm impressed with myself. I think it turned out better than I was expecting it to. So if you wanted, you could draw directly on this if you like. I'm actually just going to transfer this onto another piece of paper. So I'm going to make, and I'm going to use just, yeah, so draw that there, and then I'm going to take this and draw it onto the other side. So this is a kind of a quick way of dividing up your picture. And then if you have a ruler, go ahead and use your ruler. I'm just going to use my paper as a ruler, just because I always, the minute the ruler comes out, then everybody's left brains go into overdrive, and people start getting then the erasers start coming out, and so let's and I also just find it satisfying, I think, trying to make do with the basic materials that I have. All right, so let's do this again up here. I kind of struggled a little bit up there when I was drawing those pencil lines. I was going a little bit fast. And again, I'm just going to connect. So I've got little marks on the top and bottom of my page, and I'm just going to connect these lines. Usually when I'm teaching in person, I have photocopies that I pass out to everybody, so that this just kind of leapfrogs this whole step. But I have been wanting to kind of show people how kind of a simple way of doing this for a while, because this way you can see how I can create a grid. You know, if I was camping or something, I could do this pretty quickly. You know, maybe there's fingerprints and marks all over yours. So we're going to save this original one. If you're going to use it for drawing, go right ahead. But we're going to do two of these grids, so you may want to have an extra handy. Okay. So the next thing, what I want, there's a few things I want to draw today. And let me see. Oh, you know what? Before we even do that, let's put some numbers or labels on here. So I'm going to put some numbers on, and I'm actually going to, might sound a little counterintuitive, but I'm going to put them on the right and on the bottom just for the compositions that we have. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And then on the bottom here, I've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And you can see I put them actually on the line itself. Because if you put them in between, it can be kind of confusing if I say on line 1, people are like, oh, is it here or here? So you can see I put them right on the lines. I hope that is visible. I'll just zoom in just a bit more. Okay. So now what I want to draw, and this is going to be a little bit funny, but I'm just going to bring this up. Okay. So in honor of the strange times that we're living in today, I thought we would draw something that maybe everybody's familiar with. Maybe people are need more of, or have too much of, or can't get enough of, is toilet paper. And so I kind of did this as a bit of a lark, but I also think it's one of the reasons I'm sharing this as something to draw is just as a reminder that when we're drawing something, we don't have to find the most interesting, beautiful image to work from. You know, often artists spend hours and hours and hours looking for things, or, you know, what can I draw? What can I draw? And that's a perfect way to procrastinate. So drawing something as simple as toilet paper, right? You could, next week we're going to be drawing directly from life, and you'll see that, you know, just the stuff in your pockets is going to be worth worthy subject matter for drawing. Okay, so you can see I'm just adding some a grid over top of this. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to transfer the image that is here onto our sketchbook, right? So it's a little bit like playing Battleship, that game, if you remember playing Battleship. So, and where's my timer? Where my little phone is. Everything's in it. You should see wherever the camera is not pointed right now is just complete chaos around me. Okay, here I've got a computer that I can use as a timer, because I want to get a couple of drawings in, and this is just going to be a kind of a warm-up again. So how about we're going to put, let's say, 10 minutes on this timer. Oh, so you can't see it there. Okay. Oh, so now I'm going to move to a different screen here for us to work on this. Okay, so we're going to use this grid in order to help us transfer this image. So maybe I kind of like working from the center out. So number 4 is the center line, and D, I'm just going to circle these to kind of help me. And maybe I'll even widen these lines. And should I go right? I'm going to see if I got another color that I could use. Okay, so we could see kind of right near the center line is kind of the bottom of this toilet paper. Right, so I'm going to kind of stake out where things go. Right next to B here, in between 2 and 3, is where the outside of that circle is. And then between E so if I start doing this, and then right kind of between 1 and 2, Okay. So this helps me measure, and I'm not even perfect here. I could make many corrections as I go, but I'm just using this as a way to show you how we can get much more accuracy in our artworks. Because I know that's generally what people who take my classes want. They want to be able to draw something that really looks like something else, right? Like a photograph of their dog, or their house, or something they see on vacation. And so if you really do want to make it perfect, this is the way to get there. Okay. And having, you know, again, some knowledge of perspective, you know, is even helpful for getting this toilet paper roll sorted out here. Because, you know, we have some receding lines here, right? This one, or converging lines, that ultimately these would converge off to a point way off the page up here. Now, you know, even I'm just looking at my drawing, and there are some inconsistencies, like this, you know, could be a little bit further down if I want. Well, you know, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but there we go. That's a little bit closer to the way it should be. I got 6.5 minutes left on here. Okay, so the opening here was okay. Bring this down. And, you know, if you have a very small monitor and you're finding it hard to see these details, that's all right. Do the best that you can. You don't have to achieve perfect accuracy. I think this is the reason I'm teaching this technique, is that it's this is how artists worked for hundreds of years, right? So I think it's important to have some knowledge of the craft of drawing, and kind of understanding you know, what other artists did in the past to make the images. Like every single, you know, artist, like if you look at, you know, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, you know, all the Ninja Turtles, they would have used this technique for sure, because all of them did large murals. But even other artists like Rembrandt, Van Gogh, you know, they did this kind of stuff all the time. And this was really how you would have learned how to draw in art school for sure. I'm not sure how big this roll it would be. It's probably ends somewhere in here, but then we got this toilet paper coming down to F. And then it kind of folds out. And I don't think I've ever drawn toilet paper in my life, and probably very few of you have done so as well. Okay. So I'm going to, I got 3.5 minutes left on the clock here. So right now, like this is probably a more accurate drawing than even I could have done just by eyeballing things. Things aren't exactly perfect. Oh, let me see, I got, this is gonna, but boy oh boy, it's pretty close. Also, you know, I've seen a lot of people in Vancouver. We have the Mural Festival, and you'll see artists will use this technique to enlarge images. Although for the most part, they're probably using video projectors. If you've ever gone and seen the Mural Festival and you walk around late at night, the night before it kind of begins, you will see a whole bunch of video projectors on projecting images onto the sides of buildings and whatnot. And then artists furiously kind of tracing those images onto the wall. You can see I'm trying to color this in, and I'm using the side of my pencil again. Using the side of my pencil also can really help avoid the lines, so that because it's so soft that I can kind of go in lots of different directions and angles without right. So I go up from this angle here, and if I keep on kind of modifying and changing the direction of my my mark, okay. If you, now that you know a little bit about this technique, if you go around and look at paintings in museums or art galleries, wherever you live, you won't find it so much in contemporary art, but you will see in older artwork the residue of grids kind of in the paintings. So, and often, instead of doing this with a pencil or a pen, artists would actually use I'm trying to think what the term is. Kind of like a really kind of like a nail, or it's like a sculpting tool to draw onto the canvas and kind of scratch into the surface. And so you would actually see, if you look at the painting from a certain angle, you might be able to see the grid kind of shining through, kind of because it's under the paint. I got 15 seconds here to finish my toilet paper. Okay, so if I just want to kind of do a little tiny finishing touch on here, I want to get maybe just a little bit of a shadow. I know there's probably some of you who are just watching right now thinking, there's no way I am going to draw toilet paper. Are you kidding me? Which is a bit of a shame, because, again, part of the point is that I want you to realize and recognize that you don't have to have like this perfect thing to study from or to draw from. I'm going to show here in a second a very famous image of some hands by Albrecht Dürer. There's just some hands, but if you've ever gone to church, you're going to see these hands, and you'll recognize them instantly. So, okay, just a little bit of shading here. Okay, I could spend all day working on this and kind of refining it, but that is, maybe I'll just move it down a little bit here. You know, I mean, look at the level. I'm impressed with the level of accuracy here. All right. Okay, put the pencils down. I'm just going to keep on drawing. If I don't step away, I used to have a drawing teacher who would get he'd be like, "Put your pencils down, step away." Okay, so that was a pretty good sketch that took us some good time. So now let's. I promised I was going to show you that image here. Uh-oh. My mouse just died. So, That is going to complicate things. Ah! Okay, give me 1 second here. I once had a drawing teacher say something like, you should never use electronics and humor. And there was one other thing. His name's Chris Williams. He's a really well-known Los Angeles artist. And he would always say, like, there's no good art that needs to be plugged into the wall or has humor, which is ironic because his artwork has a very, very sly sense of humor, and maybe dry humor as well. So I'm just letting my computer charge or my mouse for just enough so that I can move to the next part of this project here. Okay, so actually, while that's happening, let's just go to another page, and we're going to transfer this grid again, if you want to fold another piece of paper, because we're going to make another grid for another drawing. So I don't need the computer for this, which will give me just enough time to move forward. Kind of doing all of this just reminds me, I used to teach, as I said, and I still do on the odd occasion in schools, and there's always some kind of curveball that happens. Like I would be doing a project all about collage and show up to the class and forget scissors or glue, or, like you have there's only so much planning you could possibly do, and so I would you have a room of 30 kids or whatever staring at you saying, and you're just like, okay, so what we're going to do, since we don't have scissors, is we are going to make a collage by tearing paper, and I'm going to show you how to tear paper. Right, and invariably it actually ended up, producing some really cool results. So I'm just using a ruler here even though I said you don't need a ruler, but I'm using one anyway just to, actually, you know what, I'm going to use the same color here. Just to kind of speed things along here. Although I guess I'm trying to buy myself a little bit of time. Okay, so the next thing and if I can get, I don't know if I want to chance it by showing you this image by Durer. Maybe I'll wait till the very end to do that. I got my grid, and then on the side I am going to, where am I? My sketchbook. Guess I can throw this down there. Okay, and we did the numbers on the side. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And on the bottom I did A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay. So, let's see if I've got power. Okay. There we go, okay. So I'm just gonna jump right to this, and then we'll let the computer charge that, and then, okay. So the image that you see on your screen is a very famous image that was done in the 1942, I think, and it's sort of a morale booster, rallying cry in the United States to for people to roll up their sleeves literally and help out during the war effort. And as you probably know, during World War II, because so many of the men were overseas fighting, women had to enter the workforce and help build airplanes and bombs and all sorts of things. And so this image that became known as Rosie the Riveter is a very iconic image that came out of that. And as you'll see later on, it has kind of resonance for some of the situations that people are going through today. So what we'll do is we're going to try drawing this picture onto our page here. So I'm going to set a 20-minute time. And you're probably like, oh my goodness, 20 minutes. It took me 10 minutes to draw toilet paper. So the point is we're going to try to get as much done in that 20-minute period as possible. So likewise, if you've got your grid on your paper, here I've imposed a grid over top of this image, and then some numbers. And I'll show you, this is a drawing I've done previously. So we're going to get to that point here shortly. Although, you know what, I did this grid. This might be a little bit easier for some people to work from my drawing as opposed to trying to work from the original. I'm trying to decide what would be easier. Well, let's keep this image, my drawing, on the screen there, and we're going to work from that. And okay, so to do this drawing, and I'm going to draw darker than I suggest you draw, just because I want you to be able to see how I'm doing this. So let's say at the very top here, I've got the words. You know, we can do it, right? So I'm just going to make like a line here. This is going to be the top of the words, and this is the bottom of the words. And so that kind of helps me figure out where that is. And I've got the word balloon comes through here, and then kind of, so I'm not going to do this religiously, trying to make it as exacting as the image on the screen is, but because I'm just going to use the grid to help me get into position here to try to make this drawing as accurate as possible. So if I go to number 4, right down here is the chin. So we've got a chin right around here, and then the cheek comes up, and then right in this corner, the outside of the face, And then keep on going. We got an ear right here. And her hair up here. And then I'm going to come just around. Okay. So this is kind of the outline of her face. Now I want to locate where these eyes are. So we got one eye kind of near these two where they intersect. And I've got another one. And, well, I'm not going to... In the other drawing class that I teach, I go into how to draw faces. So I'm not going to spend too much time trying to kind of teach you how to draw faces. It's just about trying to... And you'll see, if you look online, there's hundreds and hundreds of people have drawn this image. And already there's some distortion happening. That's all right. So the other thing is, you can see on my drawing, I guess maybe I'm drawing a little bit too lightly. Things are, you know, like I started, if I was to continue drawing this, these lips would be over here. So this is already telling me that I need to move some of my facial features over. All right, so I'm letting the drawing tell me what it needs. And then down here, so actually this is much thinner. And I'm just going to block the whole thing in as quickly as possible. So, oops, this actually comes up here, doesn't it? If you go back to our very, very first class, we did something similar in which I had you draw what you saw in boxes into your sketchbook. And so this is kind of similar. If you imagine each little box, if you kind of zoom into each one and try to draw what you see in the box, it would basically replicate that same exercise. So we got her hand, comes into E. And then I'm going to draw her fist up here. So you see that, like, I'm kind of moving around. I'm not getting into the fine details because I just want to get the shape of this image in place, and then I can even get rid of the grid entirely, because after a while it can kind of start handicapping us. And I'm going to get rid of it. Oops. Well, maybe I'll leave it up for people who are drawing. And where are we? This. All this folds and stuff, you can kind of use your imagination for that. You don't have to worry about getting the folds all perfect either. Right here we got her other arm. You know, I also use this kind of technique even when I'm, I kind of, like with the, while I'm drawing, will kind of use a kind of a invisible grid in my imagination while I'm drawing to help kind of transfer images if I'm not actually using a grid. And So that's kind of why I think it's important to try this exercise, because once you kind of understand it, you can kind of internalize it a little bit. Same sort of thing with perspective, is that, and maybe I'll show you some drawings that I've done trying to plan out the renovations for this basement. And I also do so I'm drawing in perspective, but I'm moving things around and reorganizing, just be like a very dirty kind of type of perspective. Okay. So you can already, you may even look at your drawing of the face may even be better than mine, maybe because you spent more time on it or you nailed it right off the bat. I'm not so worried about getting a kind of nice accuracy there. So now I'm doing the words up here. I'd be so interested to see the results other people had on this, or really any of the projects we've done. I think it's you know, it's good for me to see if people are actually doing it, like if I'm teaching it properly. So it helps me if I see everyone's drawings and there's, you know, reoccurring problems in it, then I realize, oh, okay, I must have made a mistake along the line, because if everyone is having struggles in the same area, then that's my fault. I always think if people aren't getting it, then it's my responsibility as a teacher to make it make sense. And also to, I think, try to make it as compelling as possible, so that people want to continue learning. So, you know, doing all this text here, it's a bit of a pain, and I probably can do it faster than most people. But this would give you an idea if you're making a garage sale sign or something, and you could design it on your computer, and then you could later on transfer it using the same technique onto a piece of poster board or whatever it is, right? Okay, so I think I've got 10 minutes left on my clock here. So I think at this point, what I'm going to do is, well, I'm going to leave what I want to do. Ideally, what I would do is go back to one of these drawings and then work from it, so that I'm not, you know, beholden to my original, to the grid. Like, I get everything kind of the composition organized. You know, now I have the rough proportions of arms and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to see if I got my 4B, here's a 2B pencil. So I'm going to attack these eyes right here. This face is going to be a little bit funny. That's okay. You'll see as mine, I think, is going to have a few inconsistencies, to put it lightly here. I think just because it's, while I'm like talking and drawing and all this stuff at the same time is a bit of a challenge, to say the least. So, oh, my goodness, she is looking different here. Oh well, it's a good reminder that, well, you know what, I'm going to show, I have a little bit of surprise at the end anyway, so this will allow us to, if we're not happy with our drawing, wow, to kind of a quick and easy fix on it too. So this is the thing about doing live videos, is if things aren't going your way, you're fully exposed. So I'm not super happy with this face right now, but I'm going to keep on going here because I wanted to get more of the drawing done before I start working on that face again and trying to fix it. I got 5 minutes left on the clock, and I want to get more than just a face on this page here. And also kind of remind everybody else that just because you don't have a perfect face doesn't mean your drawing is no good. I'm sure it's good. This nice, forearm. She's working out, doing the heavy lifting. So you can see I'm just sort of, I can move my sketchbook around, and I'm kind of playing with some of these wrinkles in the fabric. I'm also going faster than I would normally go, and taking a little bit of liberties. So probably maybe faster than some people would be comfortable with, but okay. Thank you. So there's the grid back on the picture there. Thank you to my wife who's watching from upstairs. So the other thing too is that if you're doing this, you can get this original, like get this drawing done, and then you could use this as the source for another drawing. So because once you've got, like, this helps you kind of solve all of the problems in your drawing in terms of just composition. So, and I was even thinking about doing that, you know, as we began here, but I thought, we might run out of time. We got 3 minutes left here on the clock. This is also, again, like a traditional way of transferring an image onto a canvas. So, you know, if this was an underdrawing that I would be putting onto a canvas and then painting over it, I wouldn't want to spend too much time working on the face and doing all those details, because I'm going to paint over the whole thing, right? So it's just about getting yourself into the ballpark, as it said. Okay, so now that I've got this, and I feel like I've got a lot of the rest of the face in here, or sorry, all these wrinkles, I can try doing a little bit of that to make it a little bit more believable. All these folds. Now I got 2 minutes left to work on this face. So, looking at the screen here, and then let's go in here, and I'm gonna just go wild, erasing. Now, obviously, you should probably be drawing much more lightly than I am. Let me see. Which makes erasing a real problem. But I got 16 seconds left. Okay, rescued it a little bit. So, this nose. The other thing too, you know, I'm trying to draw this on a diagonal because, but what I would do is, I was trying to draw this face, is I would even kind of rotate my sketchbook this way so that I can see the face a little bit more accurate. Like I see now, this eye is, or this one is, they're not, like they should be on the same level, right? So they're a little bit out of sync here. So just before I kind of move on, is that I would draw this eye. Whether it's exactly in the right place there or not is irrelevant. So I'm trying to fix some of the problems that I had in my drawing, and then that helps. So so when I turn it back, there we go. So, oh, that's funny. The the face eye recognition on my overhead camera is picking up the face of my drawing, which actually is good because it makes it look like the camera thinks that there's actually a face down here, so that's good. That's pretty funny. I didn't expect that, but I mean it's telling me that the camera thinks there's a face there. It can recognize some eyes and okay. So I'm just gonna go up to, let's see, I'm just gonna see those of you who are still drawing. I might move on here shortly and just put up the original, and there's some spots on here, and I don't really care if I get the spots in the right place. I could then, I guess it's, I'm not sure how many people are watching or if anybody's uploaded any photos. I haven't looked at any of the comments here, which is obviously why my wife had to run down and alert me. So I don't know where we're at with that, but I think I'm just going to spend 5 more minutes here on this drawing. And just trying to kind of get it a little bit more to a finished point here. So I'm just going to really kind of quickly color things in. So, you know, again, when I was talking about, like, once you understand this process, you kind of internalize it. Like, was it last week when we were drawing dogs, and I was kind of drawing some lines to show kind of where the you know, where the tail matches up with the head and all that kind of stuff. That is stuff that kind of comes from this sort of approach to drawing. So you're kind of looking at, like, okay, if I draw a line from the elbow, is this kind of a consistent line, right? Like, if this goes up here, you know, what letters would it intersect with? Like, where are the eyes? Are they on the same level as the fist, right? So even just looking at that, I can see technically, you know, the top of the fist and the eye are not on the same level. This eye should come down a little bit. Am I going to redraw it right now? I don't know. I'm not particularly concerned. I'm also just going to color this face in and see if I can kind of rescue it from a little bit of all of these pencil marks that are all over the place. Because I think sometimes people say, oh, I got too much, there's all these pencil lines all over it, and it just looks like all gross, and you don't want to give up before you've succeeded. You know, like, this pencil's too dull here. So I'm gonna set, what, say 4 more minutes on here, and then I'm gonna call it a show, and then give people feedback on their artwork if people have submitted anything. If you have a drawing you'd like some feedback on, please upload it to Instagram or Twitter, Facebook right now, and then in the comments just tell me where you put it so that I can find it. I really gave her way too much rouge on her face there, didn't I? She's really blushing. In that case, I'm just going to kind of add more red elsewhere in this picture in order to kind of spread that out so it's not so intense. Looks like she's got a bit of a rash going on here. And I'm going to carry some of that red into these forearms here, particularly in the shadowy areas. What else? I'm going to put some. Again, I like using a little bit of the opposite color in the shadows just to kind of give it life rather than just going right to black. Ooh, it might have been a little bit too much there. So I'm gonna like a dark blue instead of a black, I think is far superior. Let's, I got 14 seconds on my clock here, and I think I'll start wrapping it up here. I'm super curious to see what is in the comment. I'm impressed that there's at least one person who was drawing along with me while this was happening, who didn't give up. I was kind of hesitant to even do this, because this is probably not the most entertaining drawing technique. I just think it's so important, and you know, as much as I wanted to make all of this like a super fun, I think it's really important for people to understand the fundamental art techniques that you know, and all artists use to create their images. And you know, you only have to do this once in order to get it. And then you can be like, okay, I've done it. And at the same time, as I said, there are lots of artists alive and working today who use the grid technique and who deliberately avoid using other technologies like computers and projectors and photocopiers to transfer images onto their canvases, you know, they swear by this method. I used to do this a lot when I was in art school many years ago. And then you just sort of get it. You can look at a picture and think, okay, I see where the middle is. I can see. So you just kind of, you do it and then you don't ever need it again. That is so distracting, that face eye. So just gonna see if, I wonder, I don't even know if I know how to turn it off from this angle. Okay. So I could keep on working on this. Here we're at 5:30. It's an hour and a half into the show already here. I might put a little bit more time in it tonight to see if I can kind of bring it to a resolution. But I think, you know, you can see how this kind of process works, and that's the most important thing, is that you just understand the technique. And, you know, if I wanted to take this, this would be ready to make a painting from, right? I could easily, I mean, I wouldn't have even put any color onto it, and I would have the basics ready for paint. Okay. So I just also thought, you know, if your drawing didn't turn out, this is an image that I saw on the web recently, kind of an updated version of the We Can Do It Rosie the Riveter image. You know, somebody's putting, like, turn this into a nurse, or this could be somebody working at the grocery store. I mean, these days, right? So if you're really unhappy with the face, you could put a mask on it. You could put, you know, a hairnet on, and you could put some rubber latex gloves on, right? And you could even change the color. You don't even have to use, you know, so-called normal skin tones. You could color the skin green and orange and purple and turn it into some sort of space alien. You could change the text at the top, whatever it is that you like. But this is, I can't stress how important this has been to the history of art. And now that you know a little bit about it, I think it goes into your toolbox, and whether you want to ever use it again is up to you. Obviously, you draw your grid lines much lighter than I did here. And yeah. So I think let's take a look. Let me see if my computer is functioning here, and I'm going to close this. If you're still working and you're like, no, it's all gone, what am I going to do? Well, you can always pause the video. You can go back and freeze frame it. So I'm just looking at some of these images here, or some of your comments. Or maybe can I bring this up on the screen here? That out. Oops, that's not the right one that I wanted. Ah. I see some comments here, people saying it's too hard. Darn it. So I'm just making this bigger so that maybe I can just drag these comments onto the main screen here. So, oh, we got Stephen from out in Guelph, Ontario, and Heidi. I'm not sure where you're from, Heidi. Amy upstairs, and Zeynep. Is that how you say your name, Zeynep? From Turkey. Oh, that's cool. Welcome to the show. And Peter says he can hear me, which is good. Hopefully everybody could hear me. Oh, and so Heidi says, I want to ask a question. Why is it so important to imitate other people's art in order to teach it? As someone who strives to be original, I find it almost repulsive to copy someone's work. Interesting. Well, you need to learn the lessons before you break the lessons. So, it's the same thing. People who, when they pick up a guitar for the first time, if I said, pick up a guitar and write me a song and play me a song, you'd say, I don't even know how to play. So you would teach somebody the basic chords. I learned to play guitar, and you listened, like, what is your favorite music? And when I was learning to play guitar, my favorite band was Nirvana. This was a while ago, and so I would learn some of those songs. I got a book of tabs to learn how to play Rolling Stones. And I would sit and play the same song over and over, because that would be helpful, because I could, listen. I could put my headphones on and I could listen to the original song, and then I could kind of play along with it. And if what I was doing didn't sound right, it was too fast or too slow, or I was playing the wrong chords, it was really clear what I was doing wrong and how I could fix it. I keep making that mistake here. Right? So by imitating those songs, like the Beatles were another example of a band that, if you look at the early Beatles, they hardly had any of their own songs. They didn't have any of their own songs, and they were kind of like a bar band that would just go and they would practice. They'd play all the kind of early rock songs that existed at the time, and they started to kind of learn the kind of pattern that was underlying so much of rock and pop music at the time. And then they started to kind of innovate. So then, instead of playing a show where they had, they would play these long, like 3-hour long shows in the Cavern clubs and in Germany, the Cavern Club in Liverpool, and the various different places in Hamburg and such. And so they had to fill a lot of time. There's no way they could write that many songs. So they would play 30 songs that other people wrote, and then they'd be, okay, well, how about tomorrow? Let's play that song that you wrote, Paul, and we'll play 2 of your songs. So then, instead of 30 songs by other people, they play 28 songs and 2 new compositions. They try to slide them in there so people don't stop dancing. They're like, oh, this is a cool song too. Let's keep on going, right? This is me dancing, right? So it's the same sort of thing with making art of any kind, right? If I was just to tell everybody, just go and make whatever you want without learning how to draw, then it just becomes like, it's like deer in the headlights. So you have to, practice trying to draw what other people have drawn and learn the lessons from them. For me, when I was first starting out, I would get books by Van Gogh and Picasso and Frida Kahlo and Matisse, and just their drawings, not even their paintings, but just their drawings, and I would just sit down with my sketchbook and I would copy the drawing into my sketchbook and just I have somewhere in this heap of I have maybe if I can find it for next class, I'll dig up an old sketchbook and I'll show you. That's what I would just do all the time. And slowly you start to absorb you start to not only just draw like them, but you start to see like them. Because then you look at somebody else's face and you think, okay, if I was Henri Matisse, I would start here and I would start sculpting this face this way with my pencil on the paper. And then it gives you more and more confidence, and then at some point the library books of the artists that you like, you're not even looking at them anymore because you already have a flow. And then you might think, oh, I'm just ripping off Matisse the whole time, and then you look at a book of theirs and you're like, oh, I can see certain similarities, but I'm definitely doing my own thing. So that's just how people learn is by walking in the footsteps of other people. You know, if you want to be a baseball player and you're watching tapes of Babe Ruth, and I don't know, I'm a big baseball fan, so that's about the only. But you know, like any athlete, you want to become familiar with like the techniques that other people have used to find success in the past. I hope that answers your question. You know, this whole idea of originality is, you know, I could talk for hours about it, and originality is important, but it's hard to just jump there before you find, like, you need to find your own voice. And like original, like, I can't tell you how many times I have students at Emily Carr, where I teach, who come in, they're, you know, 18 years old, some of them, and they're like, I already know what to, I know what to do, I don't need really anybody's help. And so it's like, okay, if you're so good and you got to figure it all figured out, why are you even here? Oh, I need the diploma to make it official. So it's like, okay, well, if you're going to be here, you're going to spend 4 years in this university, then, and you're going to fight the whole time, it's going to be a miserable experience. Why don't you try to, like, pick up some things from other people and to develop? And so the people are like, I don't want to be poisoned by, you know, by trying to learn these lessons and then trying to break them. I just want to be free. And I'll just be honest, like, there's very, very few things I see from people who are purely self-taught, and I mean like self-taught in that they're deliberately not even trying to watch a video like this and try to learn from it, that I find compelling. And those that are, you know, definitely do. I mean, like, one of my favorite artists is Henry Darger. I never said his name out loud. Henry Darger, I think. He's he was a so-called outsider artist who, I think he was like a janitor somewhere in like New York State, who you know, people thought he was this kind of creepy weirdo. And every day he would just go home and he had these journals. He would fill up making these drawings of this fantasy world he had of, like, these little girls who were being attacked by monsters and, like, soldiers, and the little girls formed an army, and super interesting artwork. And so that was somebody who had a real vision, but he was actually, I mean, to kind of bring it full circle, he was tracing images from newspapers and magazines and using those, and then kind of like almost made stencils. So it wasn't purely original. And the idea that something is pure original, that it has no relationship to anything else that has ever existed, is pretty ridiculous, right? Like, I mean, it's like when you hear about these people who are an overnight success story, like Justin Bieber, overnight success story. Well, Justin Bieber, you know, maybe, you know, he was, I don't really know Justin Bieber's full life story. I don't even know why, but the first thing that came to my mind is, if you look it up, you could see he was making YouTube videos where he was playing covers of famous songs, and he was doing that for 2 or 3 years, and then he started building up a following, and then some music producers were like, that kid's got a great voice, super talented, let's sign him. And, you know, long story short, now he's like super well. And so that's, you know, you have to start somewhere, and nothing exists in a bubble completely isolated from the world around it, right? You know, everybody is standing on the shoulders of the previous generation. Okay, so I'm just gonna, I hope that answers your question, Heidi. But in order to kind of get better, you're saying that you're repulsed by trying to copy other people's artwork. I think that's something that you would do well to try to overcome. And I'm not saying, and again, this whole idea of copying is such like a poisonous term that has like moral implications. When we talk about copying in art, it's learning. It's trying to absorb the important things. It's not about becoming a fraudster or a you know, and making forgeries of artwork and signing your name to, like making a Picasso, signing Picasso to the bottom and selling it for $20 million. That's a whole other type of artwork, right? Or you know, specialty, if you would call it. We're talking about, like, you know, reproducing the art of other people in order to learn the important skills that are embedded in that artwork. Okay. Oh, and you decided to scroll down. You're in Maple Ridge. Well, okay. So Peter was saying he was pretty happy with his toilet paper drawing, the amount of time he put into it. And my mom says this is too hard. Peter again says, for the Q&A, can you talk about adding value shading to our animal pictures from last week? I find I can get the 2D projection of my cat, dog, rabbit with ease, but my drawing ends up a bit too flat. Okay. So how to add shading to, I mean, that's probably not something I could cover all right now, but it's just slowly building up some texture. And, you know, if you did your drawing and it kind of just looks very like too round, or it looks like it's made of plastic or rubber or something, then it's a matter of kind of really studying the original details, so like that dog and the hair, for instance, and adding more variation into it, right? I think, like, often when people are making drawings, we start from the global and then we start adding more and more detail. And sometimes if you stop too early, then you have this kind of unfinished kind of surface, right? Then it needs to be kind of refined. And in nature, while there is lots of symmetry, there's also probably even more chaos happening, right? And more randomness of, and like we think about hairs that are kind of going in different directions. And that's stuff that we may not allow ourselves to do necessarily when we're drawing, because we're trying to kind of want it to look pretty. And often when we start trying to do that, we start kind of eliminating these little details that we think make something look ugly or unruly, but by doing that, we make it look unnatural, like this slightly uncanny quality where it looks like everything's there, but it's just so well organized that it now seems strange, right? So it's about trying, and, you know, that's the same sort of thing with, like, you know, if you've ever seen these new robots, you know, that I was at an event, was it last year, for the unveiling of a painting of mine. And they had one of these weird robots that's dressed up, or kind of like, you know, was talking to people, and it looks too perfect to be a person, right? It looked like everything looked pretty close to normal, but its perfectness is what made it odd, right? Like the hair, everything was too well done that it seemed creepy, right? So you want to have this kind of randomness in there, I guess. And also just adding, don't be afraid to go dark too. I think that's another thing that people don't often do. And if a drawing is flat, it's because there's too much midtones and not enough high contrast, and going dark into a place. Steve asked, to copy a photo or a painting, must you draw the grid on the photo or the painting, thereby marking up the painting or the photo? It definitely, if you were to do that, you could do just like in my drawing, and then as you go, you start painting over top of it, and then those pencil lines disappear. But as I said, if you start looking closely at certain paintings, particularly older paintings, you're going to see that grid kind of, when the paint is kind of thin, showing through. Not every artist did that, but again, you'll start seeing, if you do like a gallery walk in whatever city you live in. Like here in Vancouver, there's one in the fall. We'll see if that happens. People get on their bicycles and go to all the different art galleries that are open and studios, and you'll see art in different stages, and you'll see some artists, and you'll see something like this hanging in the background. You'll see the grid, and then you'll remember this whole exercise. You're like, and that'll give you a great way to start a conversation with them. And you'll say, wow, like, why don't you just use a video projector to do this? Why would you spend all this time, like, it's so slow? And I mean, I would be interested. I have those conversations with people all the time. Like, so the answer, I don't know. I don't. All artists are going to have their own experiences and that they would share, and reasons for why they do what they do. Some people find this very meditative, right? It's a lot of stuff we did today is very left brain, right? Like very analytical, mathematical, less expressive. So it's just. And so all artists aren't these kind of wild people spraying paint all over their clothes like I do, right? There's some that their whole artwork is very super structured, right? And so, I mean, that's just the way that they work, right? So, Lori says, excellent comparison. We learn things through imitation. It's definitely how young children learn. Yes. Absolutely. Our daughter upstairs, she just mimics us all the time, and it's so funny. It's provides us endless hours, which is what's funny is when she does things that, I mean, we're isolated, so it's not like we're out interacting with people. So when she does things that are separate from imitating us, or takes something we do and does it slightly differently, it is, as any parent will tell you, is so like mind-bogglingly amazing, right? But again, she wouldn't be able to do those things if she wasn't first trying to pretend like she was us, right? Heidi says, I want to improve my art, so I appreciate advice. I've been doing art my whole life and do all sorts of stuff. I'm constantly trying to grow my range of ability. She's 47 years old. Cool. Absolutely. The more and more that you're pushing yourself and challenging yourself, like, nobody here watching me right now has to be here, right? But you're here and you're watching and you're trying to grow, and that's so exciting. It makes me really excited, because this is what I've devoted my life to do, to see people out here who are spending their afternoon, evening, or mornings trying to learn something and to grow. And that's human nature. We want to make the world a better place and make ourselves better. Rebecca says, hi from India. I really enjoyed your classes, but never make the live streams. I'll try to be there for the last one. Well, it looks like you just made it, right? And she says later on here, thanks for the classes. I really learned a lot. Well, that's great. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it there for today. I have a little graphic of what just for next week, things to think about. I'll just bring that up. So I would suggest, if you can, is to try to look for some images in books or magazines, newspapers, online, at the library, or even take photographs of your own, and think about trying to reproduce those drawings in your sketchbook. And don't get too caught up in making it perfect. You can see my drawing wasn't perfect. It's just about the exercise of drawing and doing more and more drawing. And sometimes people find it a lot easier, if you just get the composition into place. It can be it just sort of frees you up to, so you're not worried about getting the accuracy and proportions correctly. And then I would encourage you to, if you want an extra little bonus, is to try to shrink that image down. So instead of trying to draw it the same size, think about using half the size of paper, right? And try to draw that in your sketchbook. So how could I quickly demonstrate that? Let's see. So if we were going to do that, and I wanted to make this smaller, right, I could just take this, right, and because this is exactly half the size of a piece of paper, I could reduce it like this, and I'm just going to make a few marks for myself on the outside. Right, so I can just very quickly and again, this is, you can reduce images this way or you can enlarge images this way just by saying, okay, each one of these I'm just going to double the size. It's like a recipe for cooking, right? If you take one recipe that works well for you know, for making 12 muffins, you know, but you want to have a party and you want to, you know, this is like a wedding or something and you got to make 200 muffins. Well, you got to, like, you know, I don't know how many times you'd have to duplicate that your batter, but right. So if I got this grid onto the page, right, then I could just do this again, dividing it up each one in half. And I'm not going to do the whole thing, but, well, maybe I'll just quickly do this. I don't even know. I appreciate all these people who are still watching. I find if people are willing to sit here and listen to me go on and on, then I'm more than happy to indulge them and to share what I know. I've been really lucky to have studied at some really amazing institutions and with some fantastic artists over the course of my life, so I feel some debt of gratitude to impart those same kind of lessons to as many people as possible. And, you know, especially now that we've got a 9-month-old daughter upstairs, part of, in the back of my mind, doing this is like thinking, you know, who knows how long any of us is going to be here. And, you know, I got in a really bad car accident last year, and I think, like, okay, what if something happens and I'm not able to be here to show my daughter how to draw? Here I can, like, record something and it can be there for the future. Anyway, so I could just carry, I don't know how, yeah, I think I've got enough. Anyway, you could see how this works, right? So, but that would be to kind of shrink this picture down from that full size. Still seems very big, but anyway. So, thank you, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you actually want to do me a super favor, if you want to comment on this video after it's up, or any of the previous videos, and just leave a comment on the video after the live stream is over, because I think most of them, you know, there's some of the times there's like 100 comments in the live stream, but on the actual video afterwards there's no comments there. So that would be kind of nice to see some comments on the videos themselves, as they are for most people who watch them now, because I think the majority of people are watching these videos after they've already aired. So that would be really helpful. And if you wanted to leave a small donation by PayPal, the link is in the description below, and that is also super appreciated. There's a number of people who've been very, very generous. So I need to make, I'm sorry, I really want to be able to thank each person individually, and if you're interested, I could put your name on the screen. I also don't want to embarrass anybody who prefers to remain anonymous, but there's been some, you know, a lot of the renovations I'm doing here in the basement have to improve the studio and to make these videos better as a result of the generous donations of viewers who've been following me every day for the past month and a half. So thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you there because this is 2 hours in here, my longest one so far. So it's been a real fantastic afternoon, and where are we? So we'll see you on Thursday. Goodbye.